好，各位观众，欢迎来到关键51区，我是徐俊相。几天前，联合国呢以非常悬殊的票数138-9票，同意巴勒斯坦升格为国家，它已经具有一个国家的资格。我们就看到讲到巴勒斯坦，很多人想到第一个印象恐怖组织，飞弹飞来飞去，火箭炮是一个非常不安定的地方。那到底是什么样的地方？我们看到是很片面吗？今天在51区节目当中，为大家邀请到来自巴勒斯坦的朋友，非常不容易，他要亲自带我们前进这个国家，揭开它神秘的面纱。来看下面这则报道。
巴勒斯坦拉马拉街头，民众欢呼高歌，还有乐队进行表演，游行盛大庆祝，现场气氛达到最高点。因为联合国大会看板秀出大大的138-9压倒性的表决结果，以开发中国家和欧洲等国大力支持，美国、加拿大以及以色列则是坚决反对。此决议案几乎笃定通过，让巴勒斯坦升格成为非会员观察国，现场立刻爆出欢呼声。
I know that they're celebrating tonight in Ramallah, but the truth is, when the party's over and when people wake up tomorrow morning,they'll see that nothing has changed.
相较于巴勒斯坦欣喜兴奋，以色列驻联合国代表一脸不以为然，而美国国务卿希拉蕊也在华府发表美方立场。
I want to say a few words about the unfortunate and counterproductive resolution at the United Nations General Assembly that just passed. Because it places further obstacles in the path to peace.
They will have the ability to apply to the United Nations or international organizations such as the Criminal Court to pursue Israeli soldiers or leaders regarding whatever they think are potential war crimes against the Palestinian people.
巴勒斯坦避开美国在安理会的否决权，改为诉诸联合国大会，终于2度闯关成功。多森新闻综合报道。
这个事件最有意思的地方是，美国干不起话剧也跟党，怎么这一次130个国家呢都投下了同意票，好像完全不听美国的，这到底怎么回事呢？更有意思的观察是啊，在我们看到的是特拉耶夫这个地方，以色列的街头居然出现了示威，他们不是抗议巴勒斯坦成为国家哦，而是他们主张巴勒斯坦也有建国的权利，这有意思了。他们不是死对头吗？怎么现在这么多国家都来认同、都来支持巴勒斯坦呢？这是我们接下来要带您前进这个国家看看。到底是什么样的子民，什么样的地方？今天很高兴，我们邀请到来自巴勒斯坦的 Kelly，welcome you。
Hi, thank you。
好，我们知道呢 ，Kelly 他现在呢还是博士班的学生，他已经来台湾3年。你来看看呢，这是 Kelly 跟他的夫人，那2个来这个地方已经3年，去年生下宝宝 ，made in Taiwan， 在台湾生的哈，所以他来这个地方3年，其实台湾等于是他的第2个故乡。
My name is Anas Khalil. I came from Palestine. I live in Taiwan since 3 years. I'm a PhD student in pharmacy. I used to work in pharmacy also in Palestine. And my hometown, my village is demolished during the war in 1948. So my grandparents, my families fled from the massacres and from the war, heading either some to like the rest of Palestinian refugees, head to West Bank, the other head to Gaza. And some also population went to Jordan, Syria, Lebanon. So my grandfather went to Jordan and lived there for quite a while. But actually from 60 years, as we left our village, we cannot come back. And I asked my grandfather, why you left? He said there was a massacre in the nearby village and people were mass killed, more than 200 in one day in one village. So people decide to run away temporarily.
So Kelly, after running away from the village, you said you never and ever go back to the village. Why?
Yeah, that's true. From over 60 years until today, Israel say no for refugees to come back. Not only my village, there are more than 500 villages also. People fled and they live in refugee camp from over 60 years. So people cannot go back. Because Israel say no, say you are not allowed to. Although UN resolutions gave us the right to come back, but Israel and say no. And this is my village, you know, this is old picture. You see it's all intact. The houses are there. This is the school of the village. Everything intact. 700 people were living in peace here, farming, doing daily life, and they run away. More than 500 also villages been emptied and people run away.
But they are abandoned for more than 60 years.
Yes, there's still no one can come back ever.
有个非常讽刺的是，他告诉我们说，如果你是一个国外来的观光客的话，他们以前住在这个地方的人回不去，可能外国人反倒你拿这个观光护照、观光签证进去，你还进得去，怎么有这么荒谬的事情？我们来看看，已经荒芜了60几年，他也带来一张照片给我们看看，已经荒芜60几年的这个小村子，现在到底变成什么样子？ Show something.
Yeah, this is one house in my village. You see, you can see the plants are growing. Look at the window, their branches. You see, no one until today. This is a new image. Just last couple of years. So you can notice that it's still intact, and no one are allowed to go there. Even for a short visit, you are not allowed to. But maybe you can visit if you visit the country, you can come by and see it. It's easier for you than for me because I have much complications and have to apply for a permit to enter the country. But yeah, this is one picture shows that the village exists, and the house are there, people are there. You know, older generation, my father, my grandfather, they wanted to come back. They died. My father died. My grandfather died, wishing to come back someday. This is a key for this old man's house. This is some old man live in a refugee camp. He want to go back. This is to show the symbol that this is the key for my home, my house in the village, and this is my right. This is the right to remember that for younger generation, for older generation, we want to come back. We are refugees. We have the right to come back. And this old man always carrying. We have every year a celebration that for people who were deported from 1948 at 1 month because they fled almost in 1 day. So we celebrate this day. We call the day of return. We shall return to our villages. So we carry. This is a true key from the old village.
尽管房子都已经废掉了，各位导播，我们 take 一下这个老人的眼神。他看这个的眼神实在心里好沉重啊！我们看到巴勒斯坦人为了独立建国付出了多少努力，几十年来，世界终于联合国听到这样的呼声了。你可以看到几天前的整个投票结果，这么多个国家，130个国家赞同，138个国家，而41个弃权的国家当中，我们看到几乎都是美国的友邦啊，都是跟他是 buddy 的国家。你可以看到英国，看到德国，我投弃权票算是对美国的最大的尊重了。你要我投反对票，那是办不到的。最后你看到投反对票的，当然就是美国，当然就是以色列，还有加拿大。我们看就是少少的这9个国家呢投下了反对票。这张图表告诉我们一件事情：世界听到了巴勒斯坦的心声了。当然，我们再来给大家看到了 ，Kelly 也给我们带来了一堆东西，给大家看到我手上这些东西都是有些很皱的证件。我们请导播给我们 take 一下这个画面，这些统统都是从他的包包里面掏出来的东西。这干嘛呀？你在身上你大概没那么多证件啊，但是我告诉大家，这就是巴勒斯坦人的宿命。Could you please tell us, Kelly? Everybody just want to ask you. So, Kelly, where are you from?
We are inside Israel, but sometimes outside Israel, and it's very, very complicated to describe it in one sentence. You need hours to tell about the wars, the people run away, the people killed, the people fled their hometown, people living outside, inside. So it's very complicated question and very embarrassing. Sometimes you need to clarify for many people.
Tell me what the lives and how you live in refugee camps.
Yeah, I used to live in Palestine in one refugee camp in southern Jerusalem. It's one Palestinian city, Bethlehem, and it is crowded, underdeveloped, very hard living style. People there, even people live in the city and the villages and Palestinian cities. Because we carry this ID, this makes your life harder. If you want to move from one city to one city, it is very difficult, and you have to stop for checkpoints for sometimes hours. Otherwise, the nearby less than 1 kilometer, you live the Israelis with a blue ID, or the carriers of blue ID, which is their life is easier because they own the 80% or more of the country. So for us to move from one city to one city, you have to carry all your papers, like a bunch of papers, your passport, your ID. Sometimes I was working in an organization, so I carry this one also. So it's very complicated issue, but now it's closed area in the cities, and the refugee camp is more difficult, of course. And people say it looks like a ghetto. You know, people who living in a crowded, underprivileged area with lifestyle very hard.
Kelly, let's take a look at the picture on screen.
Yes.
Where is it here?
This is my refugee camp. At that time, in 1948, when people ran away from their villages, they gather here. The United Nations built up these tents. There were 10 tents, and this is the school. Yes, you can see in 1946, when Palestine was under the British mandate, it was owned mainly Palestinian citizens and city. But after that, in 1948, according to the UN plan, they divided Palestine. This is a Jewish state, and the old one is, the green one is the Arabic state.
Yes.
So in the Second War, they only gathered these are the cities. They contain refugee camp and villages that still live and populated with people in Gaza Strip and West Bank. And the rest, this is Israel. So, but nowadays in 2010, you can see it's a ghetto, exactly.
Ghetto.
Yes, you see divided. There's multiple checkpoints, I don't know, thousands maybe, between each city and another.
这4个图大家可以看得很清楚哦。从1946年，差不多60几年前，绿色都是他们的国家巴勒斯坦，然后一步一步领土被蚕食鲸吞，吞到后来你可以看到，几乎整个白色都变以色列的了。然后他们真正的只剩西岸这个地方，还有加萨这个地方，绿绿的一块一块。他刚刚形容说，好像是贫民区一样的地方。我们看到60几年前的难民营那个景况，那这一张又是什么 ？Can you explain this?
Yeah, this is old woman standing in front of her house. You can see it's a very old one, maybe built in the 60s or 70s. This is inside our camp. And you can see the sewage and water is outside. There is no infrastructure for the camp. And you can see the walls are already not very well looking. So the situation is quite difficult inside refugee camps. And
so how many people live in a small house?
At that time, after the war, maybe 13 people, like one or two families in one room. It was quite difficult. It was impossible. They were living in a tent, and then the United Nations built a small room. But still, it's very small, and it's not enough for 13 people to live in. Yeah, usually if you want to move from one Palestinian city to another, it's quite painful, especially these days, because there's many checkpoints you have to stop by Israeli soldiers every time from one city to another. For example, from my city in Bethlehem, I want to go to Ramallah, which is not far. If we go directly, it will cost you. It will be the distance, and the time will be half an hour. But if you take the other way for Palestinian people who carry this ID, we can go through the short way. We must take a bypass to go to Ramallah. So it takes like 3 to 4 hours. And if you go one morning between the major cities, you find a long queue of cars, more 50, 100, I don't know how much. And sometimes when a tense situation, it's very closed. You cannot go and say the soldier go back. You cannot reach your work. You cannot reach your school. This is affecting life of every Palestinian carrying this ID living in Palestinian city, Palestinian village, or Palestinian refugee camp. This is daily life suffering, especially in the West Bank.
Have you ever been humiliated at the checkpoint?
Yeah, of course. Every Palestinian have been through this. You have to remove your clothes to show if you.
How?
You have to stop at the checkpoint and say you have to remove your clothes and turn around to see you're clear. And sometimes they ask you to take off some of your clothes, and sometimes they say bad words to you. It depends on at that time on the soldier. Sometimes, but it's a daily suffering for people moving between the cities. For example, sometimes it take one day to go from South City, like Hebron, to Nablus, which is very in northeast part of West Bank. So it's very, very complicated and very humiliated sometimes. People very frustrated, very sad, very upset with their life. I don't know the number, but I think more than 400 or checkpoints between Palestinian cities. And there is also irregular checkpoints, like suddenly they put a barricade and they say cars stop. And because we carry this color, it's so painful, and it makes your life harder. Unless you carry blue ID, your life will be easier, I think.
好心酸哦，因为我拿一个绿色的 ID， 所以我就要注定过着这么不方便的日子，好像被人看了矮一等。我们看到战火洗礼下的 Kelly， 他来到台湾。我们刚刚提到了他在台北医学大学呢，再过几年他正在攻读他的博士学位。他说他的志愿呢，就是拿到这个博士学位之后，他要去当一个 scholarship， 他要去当一个学者。可是像他这样的一个年轻人，如果当年他没有离开的话，能够有这么好的机运吗 ？Can you imagine? If you didn't run away, what will you be? Especially for the education problem.
The life is very difficult, actually. For my generation, in the 80s and during the first uprising, maybe in 1980, 85 to 89, it was quite difficult. Many people left school. At my age, I remember children not be able to read and write. This is very sad. Even like 12 years old, they can read and write. Because of the closures, curfews, everyday life was difficult for schooling and for education. For example, if they close everything, you can reach your school or you can reach your university. And this happened actually today. If you want to go, if you're university in another city, if the school in another city, you can go there.
So Kelly, they don't want to go to school, or they can't not go to school.
And during the uprising and tense situation, they cannot, because there's curfews, there is demonstrations.
Just the picture on the screen, like the picture on the screen.
Yes, there's clashes. You know, this is a school. This is United Nations school.
Yeah.
So during this, usually the Israeli soldiers stop children and they chase them down, and this happened clashes between children at the school or around the school, and sometimes they close down the school for one day or uncertain time. I remember in 1980s I used to study in one school, and it happened to be a curfew for 1 week or 2 weeks, and we were frustrated, closed in one house. And I remember my cousin told me one story about he went out during the curfew with his friend, and Israeli soldiers shot my cousin's friend dead, and he was bleeding for hours, and no ambulance could reach. At the time of curfew, you can't call an ambulance, and it can come directly. So he was bleeding, and in the night he deceased. He died.
He's dead?
Yes, it was so sad story. My cousin told me, and we know this was a child, you know, but because he broke the curfew, and he went out. And luckily, my cousin didn't get killed. He ran away. I remember last year in August, I called my family in Palestine, and they told me in the refugee camp, my cousin was about to be arrested after the midnight. So Israeli jeeps surrounded the house, and they knock on the door very hard to let people open. So my cousin, he's supposed to be arrested. My other cousin was visiting from Jordan accidentally at that night. So Israeli soldier, I don't know, when they opened the door, they shot a bullet. They pulled the trigger very easily. Only my family our families was in the house. No one was in the house. Or no one was armed or dangerous, posed danger to the soldiers. But they shot a bullet, and it hit the wall, and it hit the leg of the thigh of my other cousin, who were not supposed to be arrested, who was only a visitor, and who was bleeding for some time until the ambulance came took him. So it happened just in August last year, in 2011. So this is a new story from my family, from the suffering. There was blood on the floor. I saw it. And they posted on YouTube, actually, the incidents, to show that people, you know, just many people killed by easily pulling the trigger at them during the arrest, during the checkpoint. Sometimes people, you know, checkpoint, they don't obey, they shoot. So it's a tricky and sometimes dangerous to some people's lives when they are arrested or they are being inspected for checkpoints.
今天跟着 Kelly 进到了他的国家， 巴勒斯坦。讲到巴勒斯坦，很多人到现在到后面就跟一个恐怖组织，怎么会有这样的成见呢？我们看，当你觉得他们那个国家都是恐怖攻击，都是炸弹客，都是一堆可怕的怪咖的时候，你来看看，当他要申请成为联合的观察国的时候，全世界有138个国家投下了赞成票，为什么呢？在最后呢，Carly有话要跟我们说。
Yes, I would like to say I am from Palestine. And we are normal people living everyday life, and I would encourage anyone to visit my country. We've been living for hundreds of years, all peace, all in peace. Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. We live in one country, in one city, in different cities, and we live in peace for hundreds of years. There was no trouble. I would encourage anyone in Taiwan to visit my country and see for themselves. It's still peaceful and warm and social people, very nice to foreigners like Taiwanese also. We learn from Taiwan culture. And I would say that it's not about, don't look at the image from the news, because sometimes the news portray different image. They miscarry the image. Their image is misleading for my country, for my people. So please, you must come and see for yourself. It's peaceful, it's nice, it's warm. You can feel it. Thank you for giving me the chance to be introduce my country and my culture and my clothes.
Thank you,
Thank
Kelly.
you. Thank you.